Hey everyone, my name's Jim Bob. How the hell are ya? So K-dramas have become a new fascination for me in recent years. They're over the top at times, deep and emotionally gripping at times. And the one show that has hit me in the feels more so than any other K-drama that I've watched as of yet is Love Alarm. Love Alarm is about an app that can detect if someone likes you within a 10-meter radius. Now imagine if something like that actually existed. Would our society be better off? If your love alarm rings, you know that that person within that 10-meter radius likes you. But imagine if it didn't ring at all. You know that nobody loves you, without having to ask the question for yourself. Pretty much getting rejected just by your phone not blinging. This is a common theme that the show dives into. Is love sophisticated? One or more times in our lives, people have had the euphoria of love, whether it lasts years or even mere months. The world that this show revolves around is a world where society is so overly reliant on this app to help them with their feelings that nobody ever says I love you anymore. A world in which people can never actually be sure of their feelings, because I'm sure at some point in our lives various people think they're in love, or they actually are in love with more than one person. You can't always help how you feel, but as long as you don't string both people along, obviously. Love is a beautiful thing, but it's also very painful when the person you love doesn't love you back. It's something everybody at some point in their life thrives for. In this show, Love Alarm is everything, but it always asks the question of whether something like Love Alarm would make your life better, or make it a hell of a lot worse. So before I get into the review, I want to apologise in advance if I butcher any Korean actors' names, and I will be talking spoilers, so let's dive in. So the first season of Love Alarm was highly praised, and I can definitely see why. The emotional beats that the first season hit, along with its very likeable and charismatic cast of characters, won over the hearts of millions, including me. The story following Kim Jojo as she goes through life with the deep trauma of her past, holding her back from her future. And I thought the first season was great. The second season has opened up to quite mixed reception, like mainly negative in a lot of aspects, with a lot of people saying it didn't meet fans' expectations. Now, I tried going into this season with no expectations, and I'm glad that I did. Well, with the exception of one expectation, I expected it not to be as good as the first season, and yeah, that is very true. The first season is better, like, no surprise there. But Love Alarm Season 2, despite it moving at a much slower pace, and despite it having some character traits and motivations that make them less likeable than before, it still manages to push the boundaries of those emotional beats. This isn't just a story of love, or of a person trying to pick which sexy man she likes more. It's a story of self-reflection, coming of age, and also finding yourself. So the story leaves off with a jump from the last season. It doesn't really specify, but it looks as if it's been a few weeks since the ending of the last season. The last season left off with Jojo attending the Love Alarm 2.0 convention. We see her standing in a corridor within a 10-meter radius with Sunho and Hae-young, along with Sunho's girlfriend Yukjo. This cliffhanger kept me at the edge of my seat, and I just wanted to know what the hell was going to happen, but the show decided to not show us and go by the fact that Jojo indeed decided to go for Hae-young. This isn't a huge problem to me, but it would have been nice to see the actual event play out, as it's been 2 years since this cliffhanger thanks to the fucking pandemic. But to me, it's not that much of an issue on the subjective side, but I can see why it would piss a lot of fans off. So Jojo and Hae-young are going about daily life, and once again, like the first season, the instant charm and charisma you see with these characters is so likeable. Though the writing again is a little sloppy in places, a bit like the first season. Meanwhile, Sunho is going about his life of fame and fortune, but not necessarily being happy about it. A lot of people have said in like Reddit reviews that I've read that the show did injustice to Sunho, that he's just a hollow shell in this season, and yeah, he kind of is, but I don't see this as that much of an issue. Sunho has a mother who barely cares for him, a girlfriend that he doesn't love because he's in love with someone else, a best friend who's run off with the girl of his dreams, and a jackass father who resents him. So yeah, of course he's a hollow shell. The one thing in the first season that made Sunho the charming character was that he had Jojo. Now that he doesn't, the guy's broken, a former shadow of himself, and someone who just doesn't know what the hell to think or feel. That would be enough to make anyone a hollow shell. And believe me, I know exactly what it feels like to be in love with someone, but they're dating one of your friends. It's really fucking difficult. So Sunho being hollow and a bit of a demanding prick in places is to be expected. Not that it justifies his behaviour towards people, but this is a guy who had everything he could ever dream of right in front of him. And now he's a man who's last in everything, and not even his wealth can pick him out of this dark pit. I will get into Jojo and Hae-young soon, but they're essentially the main duo of this season, so I want to save them for a little later. I found myself somewhat extremely intrigued with the relationship between Sunho and his current girlfriend Yukjo, as things are rocky from the get-go. But the thing I really like about Yukjo's character is that despite the amount of times Sunho has hurt her, by being so love-struck by Jojo, she still continues to put on this smile. It plays a big part in Sunho's character development too, as the more he feels Jojo slipping more towards Hae-young, the more he falls into a dark hole, then the less he shows any kind of affection or interest in the person he's supposed to be dating, the person who's supposed to be his girlfriend. This is another reason why I would have loved to have seen the ending of Season 1 actually show that event, because they were all there in that moment. The atmosphere is intense, everything was intense about that scene. All four characters were in that moment, ringing each other's love alarms. It could have showed us some really high intense drama there, but the show decided to gloss over it instead, which is a little annoying. But I like how strong-willed Yukjo is. She's always holding out hope that Sanao will someday ring her love alarm. It almost seems as though this character is very positivity-driven and happy-go-lucky, that even if something really hurts her, she will continue to smile through it. But eventually it got too much for her, and we eventually get to see her emotional side. So Sanao has a very beautiful girl right here, who clearly loves him, but he can't ring her love alarm because he's still holding out hope for Jojo. This touched home on some of my own experiences, so it was really emotionally impactful when we eventually see Yukjo shed her first tears. This happy girl with a beautiful smile, suddenly she falls into this huge pit of sadness, and it's actually really heartbreaking stuff. But I think the biggest shift in characters I've seen in terms of how I see them and favour them is Park Gulmi. In this season, although her personality is very much the same, she's still very self-entitled, a bit insecure and a bit stuck up, and overall still not a very nice person in places, but I think Gulmi was probably the best character. Not my favourite, but what I mean is she was the most entertaining in the season. Gulmi is desperate to become a badge club member so she can meet the so-called fake love alarm developer, Brian Chun. To do this, she has to gain enough hearts on this app service to gain membership. To do this, she's on a mission to sway as many guys as possible to gain these hearts. It's like suddenly Gulmi has gone from this extremely unlikable bitch in the first season to absolutely fucking hilarious in places. I love some of the interactions she has with our characters in this season, but I think the best interactions that she had throughout this entire show were with her mother / Jojo's aunt.
놀러 와. 누가 들어왔어? 이게 진짜
연락 한 통도 없고
초장이 뭐 그게 뭔 소리야?
합의해주는 대신에
There's some extremely funny moments between these two, but Gulmi is not just improving and growing as a character through being funny. There's some other exchanges towards the end of the season where she's actually sentimental. This season now shows the more humanised side of her, and that she is capable of caring, even about Jojo. And seeing this play out in front of you is really nice to see, being as one of the most heart-stopping moments of the first season, which really gave you an unsettling feeling, was seeing Jojo and Gulmi fight in the school hallway.
미쳤나? 야, 김조조!
Proper throwing each other around, pulling at each other's hair. It was a proper girly scrap. And I remember back when I first saw that scene, it was a really unsettling feeling. Like, you know when you see two kids fight at your school and you always get that uncomfortable feeling that you just don't want them to get hurt, you don't want anyone to get hurt, especially if it's one of your friends? That's the feeling I got watching Jojo and Gulmi scrap. So it was really heartwarming to see Gulmi show some kind of compassion of goodwill towards Jojo. And finally, the main two characters of this season, Jojo and Haeyoung. Now, being as this is a spoiler talk, I am going to say straight up that Jojo does indeed pick Haeyoung in the end. And I remember when watching season 1 for the first time, I was very much Team Sanao. But after re-watching season 1 in preparation for this season, and then watching season 2, Haeyoung quickly became my favourite character. Throughout most of the show, he is always the one who seems the most genuine, and he's always the one trying to pursue a relationship with Jojo the old-fashioned way, you know, with coffee and actually telling her how he feels rather than relying on love alarm to ring. This gives Jojo's inner demon even more reason to want to back off, because her past drama and what she did to Sanao in the first season, all that piled on top of having a shield locked onto her love alarm to shield her from ringing anyone else's, eventually gets overwhelming for her. Some people say that Jojo's reasoning for all this makes no sense, but to me it makes perfect sense. Reflecting back on the first season, Jojo's parents died in a fire and she was the only survivor. Blaming herself for the incident because she couldn't help her family and just fled. She was only a little girl, and as she's gotten older, the constant mental degrading abuse that she got from her aunt and Gulmi, blatantly blaming Jojo directly for the debt that they were left when Jojo's mother passed, and basically making her out to be a fucking villain for simply surviving that situation. Jojo now feels that she'll just ruin anyone's life that she's involved in. So that, to me anyway, makes perfect sense of why she decided not to be honest with Sanao and just hide her feelings from practically everybody. And again, that's hence the breakup with Sanao in the first season, why she won't open up to her college friend, why she installed the shield, and why she feels that she can't give her heart to Haeyoung. That's why it was such an emotionally impactful moment when she comes to this massive conclusion in the end, when she decides to take part in this running marathon that takes place on Jeju Island, the very place that all the trauma started. We see as she's running, she's reflecting on everything that happens, and when she has this big epiphany, she realises that it wasn't her fault. Being a survivor doesn't mean it's your fault. Finally accepting that she's not a criminal or to blame for simply just surviving a tragic event. We see this shot pan out around Jojo and a vision of her younger self that she sees, and for a while all they're doing is staring at each other, and the scenery for one is gorgeous, just as well as this beautiful shot. So a beautiful shot with beautiful scenery leads to an even more beautiful moment when Jojo and her younger self share a hug and she finally finds closure. It's beautiful. I'm not crying, you're crying, fuck off. Kim So-hyun is such a fantastic actress. And now Zhao Zhao's character has a big lapse in judgment in this season. This moment alone, I just couldn't help but love her nonetheless. Such a charming character, such a great actress, such a powerful performance. I know I praise the show a lot, but it still isn't perfect. There are a couple of issues I have which I'll get into right now. So some of the negativity that I've seen with this show's reviews say that the show did Sunao dirty, and while I don't agree with it entirely, I can understand. It doesn't quite feel like Sunao got the closure that he needed after having that heart-to-heart with Zhao Zhao at the end, because despite everything that he goes through, and accepting the fact that Zhao Zhao loves Haeyoung and not him, he still can't quite ring Yuk Zhao's love alarm, despite him coming to visit her numerous times over the space of God knows how long. So I just think it would have been nice to see Yuk Zhao's love alarm ring at least once by Sunao before the end of the season. Another issue I have is that Chun Duk-gu, who is the real developer of Love Alarm and a character in the first season who we all believe to be dead, was teased at the start of the season as being in a hospital bed, badly injured and kept under the watch of Brian Chun, his brother, who again is posing as the fake Love Alarm founding developer. In one scene we see the hospital bed from Brian Chun's security room empty and Duk-gu is nowhere to be seen, which was quite suspenseful until he randomly pops up in a scene talking to Haeyoung, and it felt a little anticlimactic, like, okay, there he is. How did he escape? What happened? He's just there all of a sudden? Okay. Another issue I have is the side plot with this creepy stalker guy who appears to be murdering people because he believes that Zhao Zhao's famous art Instagram account called The Ringing World is some kind of prophecy. But in reality, The Ringing World is actually a depiction of Zhao Zhao's life. It started pretty interesting. This random guy shows up at the convenience store where Zhao Zhao works and chases her down the street, saying he loves her. It was a terrifying and suspenseful, gripping moment, but it doesn't really go anywhere past that. Zhao Zhao ends up feeling extremely guilty and ends up having to come out publicly about The Ringing World being her account. And then towards the end, the guy is just suddenly arrested, and like that's it just closes just like that. Now the third issue I have is the subplot related to the stalker incident. While Gulmi is on a live stream to her followers, she tells her followers that if they buy the clothes that she's trying to sell, that she will tell them who the owner of the Ringing World is, which of course is Zhao Zhao. So when this guy appears outside of Zhao Zhao's convenience store, Zhao Zhao starts to believe that it was Gulmi who told him. It turned out not to be the case, and when Zhao Zhao tries to confront Gulmi about this over the phone, Gulmi hangs up without giving her a straight answer.
박굴미, 나한테 뭐 할 말 없어?
뭔 말? 나한테 욕 더 먹고 싶어?
없냐고.
내가 왜 말하냐? 옷도 하나도 안 샀으면서.
And here's the thing, Zhao Zhao never questions Gulmi about it again for the remainder of the season, which was a little weird. So I'm guessing this creepy guy just found out who she was on his own somehow. I mean, I know that's possible, but okay. And it did feel a bit off in places now that Haeyoung has been promoted to the season's main male lead after being a secondary character in the first season, while Sunao is being demoted to the secondary male lead when he was the main lead in the first one. But overall, Haeyoung definitely became my favourite character in the end. And again, I was very much Team Sunao by the end of Season 1, but despite all the build-up in Season 1, I started to ship Zhao Zhao with Haeyoung a lot more, and Sunao with Yuk Zhao, and that's exactly how it turned out in the end, so I was quite a happy man when the season finished. But seriously, Sunao, look at this girl, how can you not love her, man? Like, seriously. Yeah, I'm crushing on her. If you couldn't tell. I fucking hate 2021.
One more thing!
But these issues don't bother me all that much. I mean, they can be a tad bit distracting, but they're not show-breaking problems if you ask me. I still overall thought that Love Alarm Season 2 was extremely good. We see two-faced, arrogant, bitchy characters from the first season grow and become more sentimental. We see relationships fall apart and form again. We see people come to conclusions that maybe life isn't what they thought it was. But what really holds the show together is definitely its characters, because I don't think the writing is all that great. I mean, there are definitely dramas that I've seen which I think are a lot better in terms of the writing department. Like, for example, Jane the Virgin, I think, is like the best romantic drama thing that I've ever seen in my entire life. Love Alarm being a close second. So overall, guys, Love Alarm Season 2, I really enjoyed it. There's a few issues that I have, and it's a bit of a declining quality compared to the first season, but it doesn't bother me all that much. I really enjoyed myself with this season. So that was a review. Thank you very much, guys. I hope you liked it. As always, I hope you have a fantastic day. If you like what I do here, consider clicking that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. Remember, it's not just a movie, it's an experience. Stay awesome, everyone, and have a good day.